In March 2008, an announcement was made that would completely change the history of Hawaiian aviation.
People who fly and work for Hawaiian Airlines are left in a lurch tonight. The airline announced it's filing for bankruptcy and ceasing all passenger service.
Aloha Airlines, an airline with over 61 years of history, filed for bankruptcy. But what shocked everyone the most was that the cessation of operations wasn't due to an accident, mismanagement, or lack of experience. A dangerous trap in global aviation dynamics would reveal that no strategy could solve it, at a time when the global airline industry was punishing any company without massive scale. Aloha Airlines was born in 1946 with a different name, Trans-Pacific Airlines, and a clear mission to connect the Hawaiian Islands. In the post-war period, Hawaii was completely isolated. With 6 islands separated by several kilometers, one of the only alternatives was a boat crossing that took hours, or flying with the only local airline, Hawaiian Airlines. The company started by breaking Hawaiian Airlines' monopoly, which until then controlled the inter-island routes. More competition meant lower prices, more flights, better service. It was the kind of business that made sense, a local company serving a real need of a local population, and it worked. In the 50s and 60s, Aloha established itself as part of the state's infrastructure. It wasn't just a brand, it was how Hawaiians moved around. Workers took 30-minute flights between islands, the same way people on the mainland took buses between cities. The fleet was modest, but modern for its time. In the 1980s, Aloha operated Boeing 737 versions 100 and 200, reliable aircraft, efficient for short routes. The company understood its market. Frequent flights, quick, no frills. Some DC-10s for trans-Pacific routes to Taipei and Guam, with the intention of expanding to international markets outside Hawaii. Over the decades, Aloha grew. It expanded, improved service, it earned passenger loyalty. It even tried routes to the mainland, Oakland, Las Vegas, but its heart was always in inter-island service. And here's the crucial point that many people ignore. Aloha was good at what it did. We're not talking about a decadent or incompetent company. The planes flew on time. The operation was efficient. Costs were controlled. The brand was respected. The problem? Growth had a physical limit. The Hawaiian inter-island market carries about 7 to 8 million passengers per year. Does that seem like a lot? It's not. For comparison, Atlanta Airport alone handles over 100 million passengers annually. Aloha was operating in a market that, no matter how efficient, could never generate the scale necessary to compete in terms of bargaining power with manufacturers, fuel suppliers, or access to cheap capital. This wasn't Aloha's fault, it was Hawaii's geographical reality. And in the 2000s, this reality would become fatal. Hawaii looks like paradise from the outside, but from a commercial aviation perspective, it's a relentless laboratory of economic limits. There are 6 main inhabited islands. The truly viable commercial routes, basically 5: Honolulu, Maui, Honolulu, Kauai, Honolulu, Big Island, Maui, Big Island, and some marginal variations. And that's it. There's no way to create new routes. There's no hinterland. There are no mid-sized cities to connect. The population is stable. Tourism grows and shrinks in predictable cycles. The market doesn't scale. It never scaled. Now imagine 2 companies competing in this microscopic space for decades. Hawaiian Airlines, the original, larger, more established, and Aloha Airlines, the historic challenger, smaller but solid, respected, deeply integrated into local life. For years, this duopoly worked. Margins were tight but predictable. Fares reflected real costs. It was a fragile but sustainable balance. The problem started before 2008, much earlier. Between 1999 and 2004, the price of oil went from around $12 to $15 to somewhere between $35 and $45. In absolute terms, it may seem modest compared to the later peak, But in relative terms, it was an explosion, an increase of over 200%. For airlines, fuel isn't just an input, it's the central cost. Even under normal conditions, it represents 30 to 40% of the entire operating structure. And for Aloha, there was a structural aggravating factor: fleet and geography. The company operated mainly with Boeing 737-200s, robust aircraft, but equipped with JT-8D engines, reliable but inefficient in consumption compared to more modern generations. On long routes, this would already be a problem. On short routes, it's a nightmare. Climb, minimal cruise, descent. The plane spends most of the flight in the most expensive phases of consumption. Add to this the post-9/11 shock. Air demand in the US dropped abruptly. Security costs increased. Credit became more selective. Investors began treating airlines as structurally high-risk assets. Large companies survived with scale and diversification. Small and isolated companies entered survival mode. It was in this context, not due to mismanagement, not due to a specific strategic error, that in December 2004, Aloha filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. This point is fundamental. The first Chapter 11 wasn't caused by predatory competition. It was caused by a classic combination of external cost shock, structural fragility, and lack of scale. During the restructuring, Aloha did exactly what's expected of a rational company in reorganization: cut costs to the physiological limit. Employees accepted salary reductions of 10 to 15%. Contracts were renegotiated, marginal routes were eliminated, the fleet was trimmed, administrative costs reduced to the minimum viable. In May 2006, Aloha emerged from Chapter 11 technically more efficient, with adjusted internal numbers and a lean operation. But here's the crucial and frequently misunderstood point. The restructuring fixed the company, it didn't fix the market.
Hawaii remained small. The routes remained the same 5. Fuel dependency remained absolute. The margin of error was 0. And then, exactly at this moment of maximum structural fragility, a third player entered the board. In 2006, Mesa Air Group launched Go, not as a company created to coexist, but as a competitive weapon. Go's entry transformed a fragile market into a financial killing field. Hawaii never had economic space for 3 operators, but Go didn't enter seeking balance. It entered seeking disruption. The fares tell the story. Routes that traditionally cost $60 to $80 began being sold for $19 to $29, not as a temporary promotion, as a regular price. Prices that didn't even cover basic operating costs. A round-trip Honolulu-Maui flight, even at that time, consumed over $1,000 in fuel alone. Maintenance, crew, airport fees, overhead, another $500 to $800 per flight. Approximate total cost, $2,000. With 130 seats and an average fare of $25, maximum revenue would be around $3,250. Tight gross margin. Real operating margin, negative. Go was deliberately operating at a loss, and it could do this because it had something Aloha didn't have: external capital and profitable operations on the mainland capable of subsidizing losses in Hawaii. This wasn't classic competition, it was a war of attrition. And wars of attrition aren't won by those with the best product, but those who can bleed the longest. Aloha had no choice. In a small market, you can't give up market share. If it maintained fares at $70 while the competition charged $25, occupancy would plummet in weeks. In months, the operation would collapse. So, Aloha matched the prices and began losing money on every flight. Fixed costs don't disappear when revenue drops. Planes need maintenance, employees need to be paid. Leasing doesn't wait for future recovery. And, unlike Go, Aloha didn't have a continental operation to fund local losses. All cash came from a market now operating with negative margins. Meanwhile, between 2006 and 2008, oil began its second and fatal climb, from $160 per barrel in 2006 to $147 in July 2008. This wasn't inflation, it was a systemic shock. A Boeing 737-200 consumed about 3,000 to 3,500 liters of fuel per typical inter-island flight, with fuel at about $3.50 per gallon. This meant something between $3,000 and $3,500 per flight in fuel alone. Multiply by 150 to 200 daily flights. Daily cost, around $500,000. Monthly cost, around $15 million. Annual cost, around $180 million. And Aloha had annual net revenue in good years under $200 million. In other words, even without making any mistakes, fuel alone brought the company to break even or worse. And the fare war didn't stop. It continued. Revenue per seat mile falling 30 to 40%. Cost per seat mile rising 40 to 50%, mathematically unsustainable.
Large companies like Delta, United, or American also suffered, but they had global scale, fuel hedging, ability to reallocate fleet and renegotiate contracts. Aloha had none of that. Only short routes, only expensive flight faces, only a market too small to absorb shock. In 2008, everything converged. Oil at historic peak, global financial crisis forming, credit collapse after the Bear Stearns event. Aloha tried to raise $35 to $50 million to survive. It didn't find a single investor. Without credit, an airline has 30 to 60 days of cash. After that, it can't pay for fuel, can't pay crew, can't fly. On March 20, 2008, Aloha announced the immediate cessation of all passenger operations. Second bankruptcy filing in less than 4 years. 61 years of history ended in days. But the death wasn't sudden. It was slow. The announcement only made the inevitable official. And yet, something survived. Aloha Cargo thrived because the cargo model is different. Transferable surcharges, more predictable margins, less destructive competition. This is the final proof, the smoking gun. The problem was never Aloha as a company, it was the passenger model in that specific market. Aloha's story isn't about incompetence, it's about structural limits. When geography is destiny, strategy has boundaries, and no business plan, no matter how good, can overcome them.